What is shaking, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast, where we are here to help you be happy, healthy, wealthy, and get better every single day. The conversation we're going to have today is with somebody that has accomplished some amazing things, both personally and professionally. And based on our conversation off air, it is going to absolutely be incredible. Cameron Herold is an influential figure in business growth, renowned for his expertise in guiding companies to exponential success. As the founder of COO Alliance and Invest in Your Leaders, he's coached prominent businesses like Sprint Telecom and a Middle Eastern monarchy, earning him the title CEO Whisperer. Cameron's own journey includes significant achievements such as transforming 1-800-GOT-JUNK from $2 million to $106 million in revenue in just 6 years. A sought-after speaker, Cameron's impactful presentations have earned him acclaim, and he continues to educate through his podcasts and best-selling books. With a global reach, Cameron's insights resonate with entrepreneurs and leaders worldwide. Taking a company from $2 million to $106 million, there's a story behind that. Cameron, welcome to the show, brother. How you doing?
Hey, Jam, good to see you. Thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a few stories behind that one, some good ones and some.
Yeah, man. And we're going to get into that. But I'm just curious, when you came out of college or wherever you came out of, whether you went to college or not, how did you know I'm going to be a CEO? How did you know this was my role? Because it really is an interesting position with so many things you're responsible for. It's not an easy job, man. So how did you know this was your calling?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I went to a university in Canada called Carleton in Ottawa. And while I was in university, I ran my own business for 3 summers. So when I was 20 years old, I had 12 full-time employees in a company that I owned and operated, continued to run that business over the course of 3 summers. And then post that period of time, I decided to go and work for a head office of the franchisor. When I was working for the head office of the franchisor, I got a lot of experience at coaching entrepreneurs and coaching their franchisees. So it was in that coaching program that I learned a lot of the operational skills that I've used going forward in building companies. The company was called College Pro Painters, and it actually went on to become the largest residential house painting company on the planet. So it was learning a lot of those operational skills, hiring 8,000 people every year, that I really learned the skills that are really necessary to be a COO in a large growth, fast growing company. When I left that business, and again, I was there for 4 years on the leadership team, recruiting franchisees, training franchisees, coaching franchisees. I did it both in Canada and in the United States. I opened Washington, Oregon, and Idaho for the company. After that, I became the second in command for an auto body chain. And it was a family friend who was taking a very fragmented industry. And I became his second in command on the franchising side of what became Gerber Auto Collision in the United States and Boyd Auto Body in Canada. Now it's the largest collision repair chain in the world. It's approaching a $2 billion market cap as a publicly traded entity. Left that company, became president of a private currency company, reporting to the CEO. So again, in the second in command role, we built and sold that company. And then I joined my best friend, Brian, in the junk removal space, and he had 14 employees. And I came in to teach him how to scale up what became 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We took that from 14 people to 3,000 people, and from, as you mentioned, 2 million to 106 million in 6 years. So I don't think I left college wanting to be a second in command. I think I somehow just tripped into that where I had that operational skill set and happened to know a few different founders that could use it.
The growth in each one of those is fantastic. And obviously you clearly have a system, you're setting some amazing foundation, I'm guessing, infrastructure, all the things that CEOs that I don't have the brain for. I will tell you, I think it's remarkable when you find a company that's doing well. It's often not, the accolades don't go to necessarily, it's team effort, but the CEOs don't get a lot of that praise, right? But truly, when I hear that growth, my goodness.
Yeah, most COOs definitely sit in the shadows. Often it's because we're not looking for the limelight, but often it's because our job is to make the founder or the CEO iconic, right? If you think of probably the best known COO or of the CEO of one of the biggest brands in history, it would have been Sheryl Sandberg, who is the COO to Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. She came in as the adult in the room when Mark was, I think, 23 years old, and came in at about 15 years his senior to really be his second in command. But Sheryl didn't want to be in the limelight almost until she was leaving the organization. Our job is to make the CEO look good and often to be very inward facing. What's really weird though now about the second in command role is pending what the skill set and the behavioral traits of the CEO is. Sometimes the COO is a very outward-facing COO. And an example of that is a friend of mine, Harley Finkelstein, who is the COO of Shopify. Tobias Luque, the CEO and founder, is a very inward-facing, technology and engineering focused, often kind of introverted CEO. Harley, as the COO, is very biz dev, sales, marketing, PR, culture, kind of an outward-looking COO. So it's a bit of a weird role.
Yeah, I guess you can't really pigeonhole anyone. At the end of the day, it's results. We got to talk about this whole 1-800-GOT-JUNK. I mean, to take this and say, hey, man, we're going to take junk and we are going to absolutely.
And by the way, this is water. If anybody watching, I'm drinking water out of a wine glass. I haven't had a drink of anything other than water pretty much in 11 months. No alcohol in 11 and a half months. So if you see this, I'm not drinking wine on your show, JM.
Well, if you did, it's totally acceptable. And he's in Italy. 11 months, none of the amazing wine, brother. I mean, kudos to you, but oh, man.
I know, it's hard. I used to enjoy a lot of wine far too frequently, and now it's a lot of water. So
fair enough.
But so go ahead.
Yeah, no, the 1-800-GOT-JUNK, it's a really interesting idea, but when you think about it, everybody has a bunch of stuff. And again, I don't know much about the company. I just look at that growth and I'm like, well, that's amazing. I guess let's start with, how does your buddy even come up with the idea?
Well, it's weird. The idea was not a unique idea. Brian and I are still very close friends. He actually saw a guy driving through a McDonald's drive-through, and he had this old beat-up truck, and it said Mark's Hauling on the side of it. And Brian thought, hey, I could do that as a summer job. And he bought an old pickup truck and put some plywood signs on the side of it and wrote his phone number, which was 738-JUNK, on the side of the phone number. So he understood marketing at a very early stage. I mean, he hand painted the phone number on some plywood, but it kind of caught on. I met Brian around 10 years later in a mastermind community. We were in an EO forum together for 4 years, and I watched him really bumping into his glass ceiling at trying to build this thing. There were 17,000 independent junk removal companies at the time. So it's not like it was a unique idea, but what Brian did and then what we did together after that was really brand it, professionalize it, put the systems in place, and really drove a couple of flywheels. The three big things that we did to make it successful: in the first 2 weeks that I was there, I raised our prices by 40% across the board. And everyone thought we were going to go bankrupt. I'm like, we're going to go bankrupt anyway. Like, we're not making any money. The guys in the trucks aren't making any money. Brian's not making any money. We're raising our price to 40% higher. And we're going to be the FedEx or the Starbucks of junk removal. We're going to be that premium price product in a very fragmented, kind of underserviced industry. So that was number one. Number two is we really focused on being a little bit more than a business and a little bit less than a religion. We focused on being in that zone of a cult or that culture. And the reason for that was, if we could get that culture flywheel going, we could attract more great employees and more franchisees to work with us. We would drive up the retention, we'd drive down the turnover, we'd drive down our training and recruiting costs, and we could actually propel the organization by having that strong company cult where people would go through brick walls to build the business. The third thing that we did was, we had no money for marketing or advertising. Brian and I were both very, very strong in generating public relations or press coverage for our business. In fact, I wrote one of my 6 books. It's called Free PR. So we actually generated 5,200 individual unique stories about the company over 6.5 years using an in-house PR team that I built by just hiring salespeople and teaching them how to pitch our company. So those are probably the 3 core flywheels that we focused on.
The last one is obviously incredible. So many people are used to let's just ad spend, and we'll grow that way. Yeah. So that's pretty remarkable. But I want to talk about the raising of the prices because, as you said, most people are looking at you like, we're already struggling. What do you mean we're gonna price ourselves out of this? And yet it sounds like that was really a catalyst to differentiate yourself between everyone else. How did you have the foresight, the strength to say, you know what, I know everyone disagrees with this, and I'm not sure if you had a board at the time, but we're going to make this decision. It's going to be fantastic for us.
Yeah, we had a board of advisors who were slightly against it, but they trusted me because I was the only one in the room that actually had any experience at building a franchise company. No one on our board had ever done it. So they were smart people, but I'd done it twice already. I learned about being a premium price inside of the house painting industry, where college pro painters, effectively was 800 franchisees every summer with 8,000 students painting houses. And we were priced about 30% more than the old Italian guy who could blow us away with his skill set, but he didn't have the marketing and he couldn't show up in the right way and he didn't deliver with the same kind of service that customers wanted when you're coming into their home or on their property. So we just priced ourselves that way. Similar to today, you can go to a coffee shop anywhere on the planet and get a coffee for $2. You can probably get a latte for $2, and yet we still go to the Starbucks or the cool coffee shops and pay $7.50, or we go to the cool hipster coffee places that play great music and they have great pastries and we pay $8.50 for the same kind of coffee. So if you provide that level of service and if you have that level of kind of marketing and you want to provide that experience, you can charge accordingly and can use that additional gross margin to do that. And some of that gross margin drips to the bottom line as profit. It's a lot harder to make money as the Walmart of your industry versus as the Starbucks or FedEx of your industry.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And obviously it's what is interesting that you also pointed out is this guy's skill set was actually even greater, but it kind of speaks to you can be the greatest whatever digit or widget maker in the world, but if nobody knows about you, it doesn't really matter. So that's kind of what I definitely heard there. I want to ask specific to, as you talked about not having a lot of ad spend and yet to have this incredible growth. You said client experiences, I heard testimonials, but that's not exactly what you said. Talk to me about that, because I think all of us struggle with this. Do I just spend a bunch of money on ad spend, or how can I really grow somewhat organically and clearly have people that, like a cult following almost, hey, these are our guys because they told us the stories is kind of what I heard.
Yeah, and here's something interesting, and I've probably only ever shared this 2 or 3 times in my life. It's kind of one of the little inside secrets that I have, but I'll share it with your listener and with you. And I'm being completely straight up on this. And it's not because I've been hiding it. Mostly it's because people never ask the question. It's not the guys that we actually focused on. It's the women. What's really interesting is that guys rarely share a great story with anybody. Women never stop talking, and in a good way. They share experiences. They're kind of the collective tribe. So let's say you and I, or you and your wife, went to an amazing restaurant or stayed in an amazing hotel. You'd be like, wow, amazing experience. You wouldn't tell anybody. Your wife still tells people about a hotel that you stayed in 10 years before. So what we recognized at College Pro Painters, at Gerber Auto Collision, at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and what I've worked in teaching clients all over the world is focus on your female customer more than your male customer, and wow the female customer, because the female customer will tell the stories, they'll share the experiences, they'll share their, they'll write the reviews online. So what we do is we tell them what we want them to say. We show them the experience we want them to share. So as an example, we would say, hey, I know your lazy husband's probably inside watching football. We'll clean up the garage because I know he hasn't been able to do it for the last 6 months. And we'd make a big deal out of sweeping up the garage afterwards to leave them this beautiful space. So we were like, you just point your finger and we'll take care of it for you. They would share that story. I didn't even have to do anything. My husband stayed inside and watched the TV. Like, that became a part of our marketing and messaging. We also understood that even though the guy thought that he was making the decision about who was going to be painting the home or who was going to be coming on site to haul junk, it was the woman who was saying who was coming onto the property. It was the woman who was saying, no, I don't really like those people. The guy might be the technical expert in his mind, but the woman was making the decision of who was coming onto the property. We also realized that she was spending their money and her parents' money and probably his parents' money. So any female over 40 years old is making about 85% of the adult buying decisions in their family network. So we focused on them with female graphic designers, female copywriters, female branding experts, female messaging people, and that would still kind of play out today.
That's interesting. So I was thinking just the consumers, like we're asking them for, again, the testimonials or whatever it is, but you're saying, and in addition to, not that we're 100% saying it's just females, but they do tell better stories if we're generalizing. That is so freaking brilliant. And yet I hadn't thought of it. Honestly, you just, oh, this is my buddy. Go ahead. But you're right. Guys were like, they were good. The woman is going to explain.
If anyone listening today went and scraped all of their own Google reviews or all their own Amazon reviews or all their Trustpilot reviews and counted up how many are women, how many are men, I can almost guarantee you 75% are women, 25% are men. So if 3/4 of your reviews are coming from women, why aren't you focusing all of your messaging and marketing and kind of review expectations or referral expectations on women. Here's a crazy one. We run an organization called the COO Alliance, which is this large network for second in commands. 80% of my referrals come from the women members, and only 40% of my members are women. So even though they only make up like 2/3 of or 1/3 of the organization, they're referring 4 times the amount of people that the guys are. And I'm starting to give the guys shit for this, but it's pretty intriguing to realize that. So if it is that way, why aren't we thinking of that at the leadership team table?
Well, I will tell you, this is, I've done so many interviews, and it's always the simple, small, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean it in an incredibly profound way where it's like, yeah, man, that makes a ton of sense. Just look at the way my wife, to your point, she can talk about any hotel, any restaurant that she loved. I'm like, yeah, man, I had a good burrito there. I don't even remember the name of it. So simple, so basic, and yet it makes sense. Talk to me about the culture piece, man. You mentioned cult, and I'm guessing that was the culture.
Yep.
You were clearly very strategic about that. What do people get wrong, or maybe what do people get right when it comes to culture? Because I notice often when I'm working with companies, they're not real clear on what their culture is, and it makes my job easier to say, let's get clear on it first. What are your thoughts on that?
I had somebody one time say, well, we don't really have a culture. And I'm like, well, then that's your culture. It's kind of beige, and it's not even Martha Stewart beige. It's kind of like government boring beige, right? But regardless of whether you think you have one or not, you have a company culture. Here's the biggest secret to developing a world-class company culture, kind of a magnetic force that's going to attract people into your business. Hire people that want to belong. Hire people that are high in affiliation, the people that are a part of groups and have been their entire lives. Hire guys and women who have been part of scouting, part of their church youth groups, part of sports teams, parts of tribes, parts of fraternities and sororities. Anybody who wants to belong in a group, they go to workout classes together, HIIT classes together, they go to festivals together. Those are people that are going to show up at your company events and are going to want to belong, versus the rugged individual who really does everything on their own. They're not going to wear that company logo. They're not going to beat their chest. They're not going to be kind of shouting about the company culture as much. So that's secret number one, is hire people that want to be like that. I realized that we'd already been doing that at College Pro. Those were the kind of the DNA of the people we recruited. They asked Herb Kelleher, the founder of Southwest Airlines, one time, how do you get all your people to be so happy? He said, we hired happy people. So if you want to create a great company culture, hire people that culture is part of their normal DNA, that being a part of a group that they're proud of and that they want other people to join as part of their DNA. I've even studied cults. I was actually on a podcast one time called A Little Bit Culty about when a company culture can go too far and how far great companies can push without going over the line. So I've studied cults over the years. I've looked to see what are the things that I can borrow from cultures that are really going to help us in building a great brand. I think what companies do wrong with company culture is they think that company culture is about the perks, the massages, the free lunches. That has nothing to do with culture. You can give away lots to your employees, but you might end up with a bunch of spoiled brats who aren't necessarily proud of being there. The difference, culture is an alignment with a vivid vision, alignment with core values, alignment with a big, hairy, audacious goal, alignment with your core purpose. It's getting rid of the jerks in the company, getting rid of the toxic underperformers, so that you have these A players that are all completely aligned and driving forward. And then you're really caring about your A players.
So, Cameron, I'm curious because often, those jerks, but they're my best sales guys. I mean, they're crushing everybody,
Yeah.
but they're just going to drag everybody else down. Has that been what you found to be the case as well? Or
1,000,
is there a place?
10 years ago, I was sitting in the green room before going on stage, and there were two of us as speakers getting ready to go out on stage. One was Jeff Immelt, who is the CEO of General Electric. He was Jack Welch's successor, and I was a second. We were speaking at a large YPO global conference. And I asked Jeff, what was a system that he used today that Jack Welch used to use at General Electric? And he drew a simple 4-box, right? A simple matrix with results on the y-axis, the up and down axis, low results at the bottom and high results at the top. And then across the bottom was culture fit or core values. And it was low culture fit and core values to the left, high culture fit and core values to the right. And we realized, both of us, that if somebody's in the bottom left-hand corner with low results and low core values, kind of like less than a 5 or a 10 on both, you got to fire those people, right? Fire the people that are low culture, low performers. People in the top right-hand corner, the high results, high culture, you handcuff them to your company so nobody can take them away from you. People in the bottom right-hand corner, first you make sure you move them into the right seat because they might just be in the wrong part of the company. If you put the right people in the right seat, they'll excel. If they are in the right seat, you try to coach and develop them over a period of 30 to 60 days. And if they can't grow, you have to get them out, but you do everything you can to keep those good people in the right seats. The hard one is the one you identified, the top left-hand corner, which are the high results people that everyone hates, the toxic people. They're really like the cancer in your company. And if your doctor said to you, you've got a cancerous tumor in your lung, but you can live with it for a while, you'd want that sucker out of there right away. Why are we living with this cancerous tumor inside of our company that is negative, they're toxic? You know what happens? The A player finally quits. One of your, God forbid they ever quit, people finally says, you know what, I can't work with Bob anymore. And you're like, but we'll give Bob a private office. Oh, great. Now you're treating him better, even though he's a jerk. As soon as you cut those jerks, your team performs. And I watched this. I used to coach the Vancouver Canucks on culture, and the Vancouver Canucks assistant coach was teaching us about sports culture inside of 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And one day, this was going back a long time ago now, almost 20 years, Bertuzzi was one of the players for the Vancouver Canucks, got kicked off the team. And he was the only player who was a toxic cancer versus the rest of the level 5 leaders that were on the Vancouver Canucks team. And as soon as Bertuzzi was off the team, you could actually see the entire culture open up and flourish.
Yeah, sports is such a fascinating way to look at it because it is clear cut. So as you were talking, I'm thinking Terrell Owens is that high performer, but just destroys a locker room. And then you have Tom Brady, who's your ultimate pro, right? High culture, high results. Guys, what he said is Tom's going to leave. If you're sticking with Terrell, he's out of there. And this isn't to beat on Terrell, but look, that was his history. What's interesting in hockey, brother, is that's a tight-knit unit and culture. They are cultish in a way. So it's really interesting that Bertuzzi had less. I'm not sure how long he was there, but typically when I've been around hockey players growing up in Montana, look, man, if you stand out, you're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to get kicked off the team quick. So that's pretty interesting. It's fascinating the different cultures in and I know we're talking sports.
No, but
I love what
people understand.
Yeah, and I like what you said. It's like, look, man, if I had cancer in my body, just because it's a good-looking cancer doesn't mean I want it. Get it the hell out of there.
Or a cancer, maybe it's a cancer that's not going to kill you. We still want that cancer out, right? I learned a really good mantra about, or a saying from one of my very early mentors, the founder of College Pro. He said, your A players are your racehorses, your B players are the workhorses, and you have to send the C players to the glue factory. And it's our job to give our grain to our best horses. It's okay to have a stable filled with workhorses and a bunch of A players that are racehorses too. But if we spend our time with our C players, the toxic people or the underperformers, it means we're not giving our time to our best people. And if we gave more time to our best people and more time to the workhorses, they could actually outperform, and you probably don't even need to replace the C players that are in your company.
I'm curious in your role as CEO, and I know you were at several different companies throughout your career, but let's stay with 1-800-GOT-JUNK. How much of that would you be not dictating, but certainly advising to, whether it's HR, whoever's doing the hiring practices? Because ultimately you're responsible for the operations for the overall company. How much of that would you say, hey, this isn't working? How is your communication within the team? Because this is where often I see executives get really frustrated. Yeah. They want this, but yet they don't want to overstep their bounds.
I controlled all of it. We didn't allow HR to come into our company until we hit around $75 or $80 million in system-wide sales. And HR, even when they came in, were about policies and procedures and the stock options program and some of the culture initiatives, but HR did not do anything in terms of recruiting. So one of the modules in my Invest in Your Leaders course is around interviewing. And we trained and certified every manager and every executive in all business areas on how to do recruiting and how to interview and how to onboard and how to develop people. And if HR did anything, they might have been responsible for reaching out to qualified candidates and signing them up for a group interview, but they didn't even get involved in the interviewing process. Once we actually interviewed people based on culture fit in the group interview, then we interviewed people based on skill set, then we used the TORC reference check process, then we did the offer. Once the offer was signed, HR took over to handle the paperwork. But HR is not capable and qualified to do recruiting for business areas. Maybe they can help do the job postings. Maybe they can help take a job posting that a head of IT writes and a copywriter polishes, but HR should not be doing your recruiting process.
You said something that I really want to dive into, because you said I controlled everything, and yet there is clearly an empowerment that you've done. You're investing in your leaders, your alliance. I want to talk about this because, again, you talked about the glass ceiling that your buddy was looking at initially with 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and yet I'm guessing I'm holding on too tight.
No,
if I don't do it.
Yeah, so it wasn't a command and control kind of control. What I meant by that was I owned recruiting and interviewing in terms of empowering leaders and growing leaders and certifying leaders so they could do it. It was very much a upside down or an inverted org chart where the CEO and COO were at the bottom, growing the VPs, growing the directors, growing the managers, growing the people, and supporting our customers. And we could all see the vivid vision. And on each side of the inverted pyramid was our core values and our core purpose. I wasn't telling people what to do. I was showing them how to get there, showing them a role, and then coaching them, growing their skills, growing their confidence, growing their connections. We just didn't want HR to come in and run a process when we believed that each individual business area knew best of what they were looking for, but then we had to give them the skill sets to understand how to find it and how to prove that they were hiring the right people.
Yeah, brother, you're right. I didn't mean to say that you were controlling everything. What I wanted people to understand is you owned it, but I'm guessing empowering people was a huge part of what your career has been built on, because, again, success at each company, scaling to each one. Well, there's only so much Cameron that goes around.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that piece.
I've always believed that a leader's core job is to grow people. So one of my big pet peeves is when a senior leader or an executive says, "Oh, I'm so busy," or "I can't delegate that because they don't have the skills." Pick someone, delegate it to them, and grow their skills, grow their confidence, grow their connections. But leaders need to stop doing work. We need to delegate everything except genius, and we need to spend more time growing the capacity and the confidence of our people so they can actually do more. Our job is to get results through people.
You mentioned maybe it's the right fit culturally, but they might be in the wrong seat. I'm curious, with all these assessments that we have available to us. I mean, there's, Myers-Briggs, and you have Colby, and you have DISC, and I mean, there's a litany of them. I've taken damn near every one of them. Did you utilize that as a tool and an assistance, or was it more of a gut feeling for you?
Well, so yes, we use the tools after someone was hired. One of the biggest risks of those tools is using them in the interview process because it forces bias and it pulls people away from actual proper skills-based interviewing and behavioral traits interviewing. So once you know you have the right person, then yes, let's learn more about each other. And what we would do is in each business area or at the leadership team, we would do one new personality profile every year. We did Myers-Briggs, we did Colors, we did Strengths Finders, we did Colby, we did DISC, we did Thomas profiles, we did PSI. We would do a profile a year to learn more about each other, not to change the person, but to learn how to work better together. The one thing that we did to understand how to get people in the right seats was talk to them. And we just asked people, what areas of the business fire you up? I was talking to a guy one time, Adam. I remember this as clear as day. He was one of our managers in our call center. We had about 140 people in our call center at this time. And Adam was a great manager, probably moving into a director role shortly. And I said, what fires you up? What part of the business would you love to work in? We were sitting having coffee. He goes, accounting. I'm like, accounting? Accounting sucks, man. He goes, no, I love finance. I actually went to school for accounting. I was in college for accounting. I was like, really? He goes, I'm only working in customer service to pay the bills. I've always wanted to work in an accounting group. I'm like, there's a payroll clerk opening up. And he goes, oh my gosh, I would die and go to heaven. We moved Adam into the finance department and boom, right? All of a sudden, here's a great leader who was working in the wrong business area. We put him into that business area and he was he was skipping to work every day. He was so excited. So it's just by asking people, where do you want to work? And then trying to find the seat for them and not trying to pigeonhole them, because we often forget. Here's a real good trick too, by the way. 6 months after you hire someone, reread their resume. Once you get to know them and you see them, reread their resume, and you're going to learn so much more about them now that you've already hired them. But we all forget to do that.
One of the things I'm hearing throughout, you said a specific interview, and I heard behavioral interviewing was kind of what I've always adopted. But you have this ability to connect with human beings, and I mean really get to know them, not just, like you said, look at the resume after you got to know them. Specific to the interviews, can you talk about some of the best practices that people can do? Because again, you're going to really, if we have a bunch of those A players, man, it makes growing the company that much easier.
Yeah.
But what are some of the skills that you've learned along the way that people could really apply in the interview chair?
I think that, well, the first big one is get trained in interviewing, right? It's one of the core skills in my Invest in Your Leaders course. So get some base level training, read books on interviewing, watch videos on interviewing, bring in consultants to train your people, get some skills. I had a CEO the other day, he said, I've hired about 100 people. I've done lots of interviews. I said, maybe you've done all of them wrong. He went, whoa. Like it never even dawned on him that actual skills training for something that he'd been doing might actually take him to the next level. So that's number one, get some skills. Number two, show up as a human. Let go of this stupid game face in the private office and like sitting across the table from somebody. You're not going to learn anything from someone if you don't connect with them as a human. Fucking connect with them. Like sit down with somebody and laugh and joke and chat and talk, and that will actually get them to open up to you and talk to you a little bit. So when you humanize the interview process, you're going to learn a lot more. Number three is make sure that you do the questions and let them do the talking. The interviewer should speak about 10% of the time. The interview candidate should speak 90% of the time. And don't let them flip the table on you and start asking questions too early. Anytime they ask a question, say, hey, let's handle that question at the end of the interview. Right now, I'm not even sure if you're the right candidate for the role. So let me ask the questions, but I'll answer everything we can at the end if I know that you're the right one to move to the next step. Keep the kind of focus on the fact that you're interviewing them. The fourth thing is don't start selling or reverse the sell to get them selling you. But the more that you sell a candidate on how great your company is, the more the A players are going to run away scared. Keep the focus on the interview and interviewing and probing and learning more, and the A players will rise to the top. That's kind of 4 quick tips for you.
Ah, brother, I can't wait to rewind this, listen to it again, because again, there's clearly a system. I love the humanizing part of it because you're so right. Look, if you connect with somebody, get them talking, you're going to find out real quick, like, yeah, want to have them. And it's not just some canned interview response that they're giving you, but it's their real response. You've mentioned invest in your leaders a couple of times. I'd love to hear more about what you're doing there. I mean, clearly you've exited some pretty big companies. You're choosing to work because I'm guessing you really love it. But what do you have going on with invest in your leaders?
Yeah, so I've been coaching CEOs of real companies, some of them as high as, like, I coached the CEO of Sprint and the COO of Sprint for 18 months. I mean, that's the 82nd largest company in the US. So I've coached real companies, typically 50 to 500 employees, for 17, 20 years. Whenever I've been coaching those people, a lot of my skill development was around the soft skills of leadership. So stuff like coaching, delegation, situational leadership, time management, running one-on-one meetings, doing interviews, running meetings, classroom teaching, handling conflict, kind of the skill set that every leader and manager needs to be good at. And about 2.5 years ago, I decided to codify all those skills, the stuff that I've taught companies and used internally, even back at College Pro. And I created this Invest in Your Leaders course, which is the 12 core skills that everybody needs to be good at. It has a pre-test that everybody will fail because they don't know the content. It has me teaching each of the modules. Then there's some written information they read. And then there's a post-test. Once you go through all the 12 skills, you get a LinkedIn certification badge that you're now certified in these leadership skills. So I just codified some of my best content and put it out there. And I think for the price, it's pretty much a rounding error for people to grow their skills.
Mentorship. Did you have somebody that really guided your way? Was there somebody that took you under their wing and you thought, gosh, I don't know if I would have had the success I did if it weren't for such and such?
Yeah, I've had 3 or 4 that have been very formative to me as a leader. James Jones, Kevin Carter, Mary Mowbray, all out of College Pro Painters, were massive growth engines for me in growing my leadership skills. And then I had a formal mentor who was being groomed as the COO at Starbucks. And this was while I was the COO at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, kind of from the 40 million to 100 million phase. And every month I did a 1-hour call with Greg. And every quarter I would go down to his head office in Seattle for a full day, or he'd come up to Vancouver to our head office for a full day. So over the course of 2 years, he really mentored and grew me, and he was doing it for free. And I actually reached out and found Greg and asked him to grow me. And I gave him 5 core areas I wanted to get better at as a person and 5 core areas I wanted to get better at as a leader. And it was in that mentoring stage that he really kind of helped develop me. But I think the biggest stuff was really back in those college pro painters days.
I hope you guys heard that. He literally reached out to the gentleman and said, look, these are the areas I want to grow. Can you help me? And
by the way,
guess
that's why
what?
he said yes. He said yes. He said, so many people have asked me to mentor him, but they couldn't really articulate what you were looking for. You're the only person that came in and said it was these 5 and these 5, and this is what I want, 1 hour in 1 day. I just made it very easy. I didn't know any other way to ask, so I just kind of threw it all out there as a half piece of paper. And yeah.
Well, again, you're providing clarity. Otherwise, it's like, man, I don't know if I want to take this project on. I don't even know what the hell we're going to be working on. You made it so clear. This is what I want to work on. I think it's brilliant. I'm curious with COO Alliance, obviously you're dealing with a bunch of folks currently that are COOs, I'm guessing. Again, I don't know the organization. Yeah. My question would be specific to what are you seeing with AI? And I know it's been out of the bottle now for, let's call it, really to the public, feels like the last year and a half. What are you seeing happen? And is this a good thing? Is it scary? How are people utilizing it so that it's really progressing their goals and growing their companies?
Oh, no, it's a great thing. I mean, any kind of a tool that you can optimize and automate work is a massive plus for the people that choose to use it. You know, if I think back to when I was starting at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, I walked into the company in September, October of 2000 carrying a laptop, and Brian, the CEO, laughed. He goes, "What are you going to do, carry that from meeting to meeting?" And I went, "Yeah, I am. That's how I've been running my businesses." And on the second day that I was there, he went out and bought a laptop. On the first week that I was there, I wanted Wi-Fi, and our head of IT said, "No, we can't have Wi-Fi, security risk." I'm like, "I'll get somebody at Microsoft to help us because we're going to get Wi-Fi." The next day we had Wi-Fi. He didn't want anybody to help him. Now we just take those things for granted, right? Like, of course you use Wi-Fi and run laptops to run businesses. AI and phones, like we've been using phones now for 15 years. These are kind of next iterations of growth. The only reason someone should be afraid of AI is if they don't embrace it. You know, you're going to be like an executive who's saying, like, imagine being an executive today for any company who's like, "Oh, I won't use Wi-Fi and I'm not going to use the internet. I'm not going to use a computer." Well, then you're not coming to work. AI is going to be a tool that helps to optimize things. The key thing to remember, though, is there are currently over 12,000 different AI tools to do over 15,000 AI tasks. ChatGPT is one of about 12,000 tools that exist. So what I want companies to do is allow their employees to do about an hour a week to spend time playing with the tools, and then come back in and do a 5-minute book report. Hey, here's a tool I played with last week, and here's what I think it can do. We should be empowering people to bring AI into the business. But if you don't use AI, your job is at risk for sure, and it should be.
Masterminds have clearly shaped your career. It's literally how you met the gentleman that you went into business with and grew that incredible company. Is it what if somebody's not doing a mastermind today? Why should they, brother? What are they missing out on?
Yeah, well, first, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So you really want to get into some rooms that you're around other smart people to learn from. Secondly, we're not in that rugged individualist phase anymore. You know, 20 years ago, you had to go to university and memorize everything because there was no access to information. Now you have to know the people who know the information. 2 of my friends that I've actually been in a couple of masterminds with, Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, co-wrote a book called Who Not How. I know them both really, really well. I could text each of them right now. They'd respond right away. The idea is it's not about knowing how to do everything. It's knowing who can help you to do all of those things. So when you're in a mastermind community, you're working on the business instead of in the business. You're learning all these amazing people that you can reach out to, you can collaborate with, you can outsource to, or they might know the people that can help you go. They raise your game. You know, we've all heard that saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, your income is also the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. your probably health is the same as the average of the 5 people. Like, it's about raising you and raising your game. I'm actually now attending masterminds in Europe, and I'm also now attending masterminds with my wife around things around spirituality, sexuality, finance. We're going to stuff around biohacking to raise our mindset and our vibration in all different areas, not just in business. So yeah, I can't overestimate how important masterminds are for everybody. I've started 2 of them. I've started one called the COO Alliance, because so many entrepreneurs grow their skills. The COO Alliance is only for the second in command of companies that do at least 5 million or greater in revenue. And then we also launched a program called the Ops Spot, which is an online mastermind community for people that are in operations roles like managers, directors, and VPs, because they need a place to go that they're not surrounded by a bunch of entrepreneurs or marketers.
Yeah, the group he mentioned, and that book, by the way, by Dan Sullivan and Ben Hardy, it is phenomenal, guys. They have so many, The Gap and the Gain, Who Not How, but specific to Who Not How, I think that is one of those books that, man, it's again, simple, yet really profound. Was there a book that really shaped you where you were like, man, I wish every leader would read this book? I think it just changed the way I see the world.
There's been a few. I mean, I have a favorite books list on my CO Alliance website, but I'll go off the top of my head on a few that really kind of resonate or that I think people will like more than others. The 1 Minute Manager by Ken Blanchard is still probably the best book of all time on leading and growing people. The Hard Thing About Hard Things by Ben Horowitz, I think, is really strong, tactical, and even some great strategic ideas on growing high growth, fast growing companies, especially in a time when everything's not just going up like over the last 12 years. I really loved Insanely Simple, which is a book about Apple and Steve Jobs. And the idea with Insanely Simple, I think it was Kevin Siegel who wrote the book, or Ken Siegel. It's around the 10 core simplicity areas that made Apple what it is today. And they're really easy to put in place by any single business out there. And then I think if your business is already doing well, like if you're 10 million or greater, you've got to go back and reread Good to Great. And I would have your leadership team read one chapter at a time and talk about each of those chapters and ensure that you're really putting those deep into your business. But yeah, there's lots of really good books out there. I often reread the same book multiple times.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. There's a couple I reread every single year just for perspective. But it's funny. I'm looking at 1 Minute Manager over there. I'm like, yeah, it's been a while. I should probably dust it off and check it out. I could ask you a million questions, brother. You've had a really cool professional and personal life, I'm sure. What didn't I know enough to ask you that you want to make sure to impart with the audience before we start to wrap up?
I don't know if it's that you didn't know enough, but I'm going to say something that I want anyone who's obsessed about business to think about. And it's that none of this shit actually matters. Like, this is just what we're doing to make money. What really matters is our friendships, our relationship with ourselves, our relationship with our spouse, our relationship with our kids, what we do with fun, because none of us are getting out of this alive. I think as Ram Dass once said, none of us are getting out of this alone. We're all just walking each other home. And we've got to remain interested to remain interesting. So keep business as a focus, keep business as something that's important, but don't lose sight of the fact that you should have a bunch of other hobbies. And if you're not interested in lots of things, you're not that interesting to hang out with. If this is your hobby, I don't want to hear about your hobby. You certainly don't want to hear about mine if this is my hobby.
Yeah, and again, this is a guy coming from Italy, cruising around the world, doing biohacking. Like the profession afforded you these luxuries, but you were more developed. Okay, no, maybe I stated that incorrectly.
I've always chosen this as the priority. My dad, when I was 15 years old, taught me that running your own business is not about money. It's about having time and having free time. I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs where my dad was an entrepreneur. Both grandparents were entrepreneurs. And I watched the ability to do what you want, when you want, how you wanted, why you want, like without having to report to someone else, and the money just followed. So this has been lifestyle by design. My wife and I even crafted a 3-year vivid vision that describes our marriage together and how we show up as a couple in every single aspect of our life. And then we're reverse engineering that vivid vision so that we can actually kind of make our life come true. But we've talked about travel and fitness and finance and friends and vacation and sexuality, use of substances, what we do for fun. And we're literally designing our life and reverse engineering that. So no, I don't think money made this happen. I think deciding that I wanted to have these kinds of experiences in life, because I've been been doing lots of this stuff for almost 20 years.
So you were clear that freedom is a huge,
Yeah.
that's my number one thing is freedom, right? And choosing freedom over maybe adding an extra zero, that might be a compromise that you choose. But you can have both, I guess is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and I think that if we go back 3 or 4, maybe sometimes as long as 5, but certainly 3 or 4 generations, every single person who's listening, your grandparents or great-great-grandparents made a decision to move to where they move. Why are you deciding that you're stuck in whatever city or town or state or country you grew up in when your great-grandparents said, screw it, let's leave Germany and move to the US, or let's leave Sweden, or let's move from India? Like, why are you deciding you're stuck? Why don't you lead into the future like you did with your wife? You said, you know what, let's leave Northern California and move to Boca Raton, Florida to give ourselves this other life, and let's still have our place in Montana. Like, you're deciding, and I think people often get stuck in that, whether it's their job or their career or their habits or their rut that they're in. I think you can decide and reverse engineer that.
Yeah, and the world shrunk, right? It was more challenging for the generations previously. Like you said, man, Dubai and in Italy, and you have such an interesting, but that's by choice. That's by design. I love that.
Thank you.
Cameron, if people wanted to connect with you, whether it's online, be a part of COO Alliance, invest in your leaders, all the various things you have going on, where's the best place for them to connect with you online?
Yeah, if they go to CameronHerold.com, and it's Herold, it has links to all of my programs, everything that I do, my Second in Command podcast. All of my 6 books are available on Amazon, Audible, and iTunes. But I would go to CameronHerold.com and just scroll through that.
Well, brother, I literally thank you because I'm fascinated by so much of what you said was really simple. And I mean that in the best way possible. You broke it down. I'm like, females. Why aren't we doing this on the testimonials? I'm like, gosh, dang it, man. I mean, that is literally incredible. So thank you so much, man.
You're welcome, JM. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the time.
Truly my pleasure. Hey, guys, go check out Cameron. I'm telling you, I mean, really interesting, both professionally, personally, life by design. There was so much good in this. And I love what he said about the HR thing. That's not your people that are bringing on your hiring. They do the policies and procedures. So many good nuggets. I hate to use that word, but it was nugget throughout the episode. Please go check it out. Share this with someone you know, love, and care about. This is awesome. Until next time, remember your mindset matters. I appreciate y'all. We'll talk soon.